Impossible. It suddenly dawned on me that I didn't understand a single word of the book I'd been reading for so long. I shut it and looked at the cover. The letters were undistinguishable. They seemed so alien to me. Maybe I needed some fresh air. Outside my window, it was a bright and beautiful day. Yes, maybe some air would do me good. I pulled my shoes on and glanced back at the scene outside. Impossible. It didn't make any sense. Raindrops were gently falling against the glass. But how? There hadn't been a cloud in the sky moments before. Something was very wrong. All around me, more and more things were changing. From the colors of the walls to the layout of the house, everything looked different each time I turned my head. Panicked, I rushed for a set of stairs that vanished before my eyes. I was trapped in a room that continued to get smaller and emptier. Soon, it was just me and a television set, a blue screen broadcasting a single blinking word in the corner. Resume. Tentatively, I pressed the play button. Hello, son. I covered my mouth in shock. Like everything else, the man on the screen's features shifted and morphed. If you're watching this, it means you have begun noticing too much, in fact. You won't remember me. In some ways, we've never met. I'll do my best to explain. This goes back a ways, back to when I was a young man, and I came face to face with death. I was afraid to die, and I begged for my survival. To my great relief, death agreed. I would be allowed to live a long, full life, but I was warned there would be a price. I wish now that I had never accepted these terms. Son, if you're watching this now, they finally pulled the plug. I am fading away, and soon everything I know will too. See, there are people out there who slip through the cracks, people who have only existed in someone else's mind, people who will be erased once I pass away. I'm so sorry, son. You are one of them. A startled cry escaped me. Of course, I couldn't bring myself to erase you entirely. How could I? Instead, I built you this place to hide, this existence, out of my memories. Some are real, some are imagined. Nonetheless, they all exist in some fashion. But the problem I found with memories is they don't last. They fade, they blend, they distort. And I realized eventually you would see through the cracks and discover what this place truly is. If you're watching this, there's no turning back now. Farewell, my son. With that, the tape ended. There was static, then the screen went black. I watched as a blackness slowly crept across the walls until the room fell away entirely, and I was left alone in the infinite darkness. The TV in the attic. I found an old dust-riddled TV in the attic of the home me and my family just moved into today. It was just sitting in the middle of the attic, nothing else around it, nothing else in the entire house, as a matter of fact. It was quite strange. Who just leaves a TV and nothing else, I thought. As I approached the old 1983 Zenith, I noticed a notebook that sat on top. I reached down and picked it up. I flipped back the cover, and on the first page it read, "To whom it may concern, read carefully the information inside the pages of this book that I've collected, for they could save you and your loved ones. And whatever you do, please don't turn on the television that lies before you." As I thumbed through the pages, I noticed pictures of families and drawings of demonic symbols. I was becoming quite disturbed at this point, so I decided to close the notebook and read it carefully later in the night when my wife and kids went to bed. I tucked the notebook under my arm, headed downstairs, and helped bring in the rest of our things. After we got everything squared away and put in its place, we ordered some pizza, ate, then I put the kids to bed and kissed my wife goodnight. I told her I'd be in a little later after I finished up some work in the study. I went in and locked the door to the study behind me, sat down and pulled the notebook from the bottom desk drawer and placed it in front of me. It read like instructions on how to put the most difficult of toys together on Christmas morning. The details and information that was collected was outstanding. It turns out the notebook was written by the home's previous owner, and after the strange disappearances of his family, he set out and tried to find out what happened. He revealed that the television was sitting in the attic alone when he and his family moved into the home, and strange things didn't start happening until it was plugged in and turned on. Almost instantly, strange things started to happen when the television was turned on. It made a loud, deafening pop when he first switched it on, then an eerie, bone-chilling breeze that emanated from upstairs and wafted throughout the living room. Next came the loud noises that could be heard from up in the attic whenever somebody turned the TV on that sounded like footsteps all across the attic floor. Then came the distant chanting whenever the TV was switched on. It almost sounded cult-like, which all led to his family acting peculiar and changing before his very eyes. Their moods and personalities completely changed. They became despondent, glossy-eyed, catatonic, if you will, almost as if they were possessed. Then, not long after they started to change, they disappeared, always last being seen watching the television. He was devastated, but had to find out what happened to his family. He did painstaking research about the history of this home and its inhabitants, and made countless calls, tracked down any surviving family members of the past residents, and interviewed as many locals that would speak to him. He found that this exact thing that was happening to him and his family had happened to the previous 5 families that owned the home, and that the original owners met a grisly end in their own right. And another disturbing detail was that the TV was always involved in every single case. It belonged to the original family that owned the home. He found out through family members that knew. It sat upstairs in the attic, which was also the family rec room at the time, and sat in the middle of the room when the entire family was sacrificed by a cult they were trying to save their daughter from. The family was massacred and strewn around the attic, blood everywhere, including all over the television where demonic symbols were drawn on the backs and sides, and on the screen, written in Latin, that was described saying, "For whomever turns on this screen will awaken our master and will usher him into our earthly realm, and whomever watches what is on the screen will become an unshakable servant." Ex-police officers who were at the scene of the murders that he interviewed say the television was removed as evidence, but somehow disappeared and made its way back to the house, and has been present with every family that moves in since. And every family slowly disappears, just like the previous one. He then finished up with a list of things to try and avoid the same fate as the previous families. 1. Don't turn the television on. Don't even plug it into the wall. Seems self-evident there, pal, I thought. 2. If the television does get turned on, do not watch the screen and immediately turn off the TV and leave the premises at once. And 3, if the television has been turned on and someone has watched it, don't let that person out of your sight. You may be able to protect them. Please, don't let them disappear. He then closes with a bunch of incoherent sentences, then writing the same word over and over again like he was losing his mind, and finished with a barely legible "help me." I closed the notebook trembling, not knowing what to believe. I started thinking back at how our purchasing of this home transpired. Yes, it was on the cheaper side, which I can see why now. And come to think about it, the realtor did seem to dodge the question when we asked why would the previous owners get rid of such a beautiful home. My head was spinning at this point. I decided to go to bed and figure out what to do in the morning. I slept horribly, having terrible nightmares about the television and one of my kids turning it on. I decided the first thing I would do when I got out of bed and dressed is throw the TV away before it was too late. I got my clothes on and made my way downstairs to the kitchen. I heard my kids and wife already up, making breakfast in the kitchen. I walked in and greeted their smiling, happy faces. I sat down at the table and started to eat. Just then, my daughter giggled and said, "Daddy, look what Mommy found." I looked at her, and she was pointing at the living room over my shoulder. I turned and was horrified at what my eyes were staring at. I could hear my wife say, "Yes, I found this old television in the attic. I plugged it in, and it worked. So I decided to bring it down for the kids to watch. Isn't it great?" A glimpse through the static. I woke up feeling like I'd swallowed a desert. I wouldn't be surprised if I coughed dust as I pulled my covers off and groggily made my way to the kitchen for some water. The hallway flickered with light from the television. The blaring static illuminated my father's profile from where he was slumped over on the couch. "Dad?" I crept forward a few steps, now close enough to smell the cheap whiskey on his breath. "Dad!" I tried again, no reaction. "Dad!" He didn't even flinch when I was practically screaming in his face. I frowned at the empty beer cans scattered around him and turned my attention to the TV. My hand was poised to shut it off when it spoke. "Do you want to see?" I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, and then realized it was my ears that were playing tricks on me. I lowered my face to the screen, squinting into the fuzz. "See what?" I was skeptical. "What you need to see." I glanced back at my father, who was still snoring and drooling on himself. Well, okay," I whispered. The TV nodded. A scene appeared. The footage was dark and grainy and very unsteady. I scrunched up my eyes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I was just able to make out a blurry figure moving through a dark forest. They were bent over, struggling to drag something heavy through the trees. I began to recognize the woods behind our house, and I recognized my scrawny frame as the view zoomed in. I don't understand." I swallowed. The TV blinked at me. A new image. Large, bloody hands being scrubbed in a sink. Heavy breathing. A quick cut to a body crumpled on the floor. My eyes welled. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Back to the woods, through the same trees I'd watched myself traverse. Then a low angle of my father's boots. Something wrapped in a tarp, a shovel piercing earth. The TV returned to static. "You needed to see." I nodded. I understood what had to be done. I tiptoed back to the kitchen. "Can I see her?" before he, I asked when I returned. The TV smiled. A memory from years ago. Party hats, streamers, a birthday cake with 4 candles being placed in front of my small frame. My eyes alit with joy after I was finally able to blow them out. And there she was. Through every frame, she was there, bending down to hug me, kissing my cheek, slicing a piece of cake and placing it in front of me. More footage of my mother danced across the screen. I watched it reflecting off the very knife she'd used to cut my cake. "What are you doing up?" His drunken voice interrupted. I turned slowly. "What are you doing with that?" he asked, eyeing the blade in my hand. "Do you want to see?" Static. I am almost certain I hear my name whispered in my ear before the strobing light penetrates my closed eyelids. I open them, confronted by a television broadcasting static. Panic sets in the moment I realize that I don't recognize the room I'm seated in. Cheap wood paneling covered with a plethora of photographs and a dingy green carpet. I'm so preoccupied with trying to figure out where I am that it takes me a few moments to realize that I am not alone. The man in the chair beside me looks ancient, decrepit even. He stares complacently into the screen, never blinking, wheezing and rattling with each breath he takes. "Hello?" I say, rising to my feet. He doesn't react. I lean closer, waving a hand to get his attention. "You're gonna miss it," he gurgles, pointing to the TV. I glance behind me at the buzzing fuzz, then back at him, studying his face. "Where are—" "Shh. Watch. Listen." He shushes, directing me back to the hissing, his eyes never leaving the crackling glow of the screen. Uneasy, I back away, turning to look down the hallway behind us, where a door stands at the end. I am almost certain I can hear my name being whispered from the other side. The angles in the hall don't add up, I realize as I approach. The door is further than it should be, farther than it could be. It feels like minutes have passed by the time I reach it. Tentatively, I turn the handle and step into a dark room filled with static. The old man still sits, still watches intently, the shifting glare highlighting different features of his wrinkled face. I look back down the hall, at the door I have just walked through, waiting at the other end. "Just about missed it," he croaks, and I find myself seated beside him once more, watching the screen. Wouldn't want to miss it. I can't be certain at first, but the longer I watch, the clearer the image becomes. A face, a woman's face. She's smiling, she's laughing, she's looking right at me, right through me. "You know her?" the old man asks. Mother?" I gasp, but now I can't be so sure. She looks different, like someone maybe I used to know. I lean in closer, the morphine imagery obscured by intermittent interference. Yes, these are people, places I know. I knew. I'm sure of it. They are all so familiar, but they are passing by too quickly for me to make out. And soon, they disintegrate entirely, back into electric dissonance. I lean back in the chair, my head swimming. I shut my eyes, letting the strobing light wash over me. I keep them closed, just for a moment, just long enough to hear someone whisper my name. in my ear. I told you. Wouldn't want to miss it. I croak, finally turning to the young man beside me. But he's long gone. Warning. The skin peelers may already have arrived. Please stand by for further instructions. Warning. The skin peelers may already have arrived. Please stand by for further instructions. Those are the words that flashed on screen, accompanied by an ear-splitting screech. Thomas was confused. Was this a new show he hadn't heard of? It sounded pretty cool. The television turned to static, the kind you see on a dead channel. Then a boring program about renovating houses flicked back on. Some old lady loved her new garden so much it made her cry. Barely visible in the dark, Thomas tiptoed to the kitchen and grabbed the TV guide. His parents didn't approve of him staying up this late. They thought watching scary movies would give him nightmares, but that didn't stop him. He just had to be sneaky about it. Thomas read the guide from cover to cover, but couldn't see anything about skin peelers. All he could do was keep watching and wait for something interesting to happen. Just as he started drifting off, the TV screeched again. Thomas jolted upright. The words were different this time. Warning, the skin peelers are here. They walk amongst us hiding in plain sight. Please stand by for further instructions. The screen turned to static again, then back to normal. Thomas waited to see what would happen next. His thoughts were plagued with questions about skin peelers. What are they? What do they look like? Are they real? Or is it just a film? They probably have long claws for cutting people open, he thought. A chill ran down his spine. No, they'd have sharp fangs to suck out your insides and leave the skin intact. Now his hands were trembling, too afraid to keep watching. Thomas switched off the TV, then made his way upstairs. Somewhere in the house, a door slammed shut. Thomas screamed, then raced into his parents' room towards his mom's side of the bed. His eyes were filled with tears. He tried shaking her awake. "Mom!" No response. "Mom!" Something was wrong. Thomas's fingers sunk into her arm. It felt like grabbing rubber. Thomas realized something terrible. It wasn't his mom. Not really. It was her skin. Thomas shrieked and spun around. His dad was standing in the doorway. Thomas ran over and grabbed his hand. "The skin peelers got Mom!" His dad sighed. "You've been staying up late again, haven't you?" "No, yes, but we have to run." Thomas tried to drag his dad out of the room, but he held firm, unrelenting. "I bet you've watched a scary movie and got yourself worked up. Calm down. There's nothing to be afraid of." "You don't understand. They're real. The skin peelers are real." Thomas's dad laughed, then pulled his hand away and reached behind his head. "I didn't say they weren't real." Thomas heard the sharp hissing sound of a zipper. "I said there's nothing to be afraid of." Thomas's dad's skin made a heavy thump as it fell to the ground. Paid programming. I used to leave the television on while I slept. Yeah, I know. Not the best idea, especially when you have electricity bills to pay, but it helped me drift off. Just some background noise to fill the void, static for my mind. I don't know why. Maybe it distracted me. Whatever the reason, I no longer do it. And not just because I was wasting power. One night, I woke up to find that the static was gone. Instead, the screen had been divided into multiple sections, like a grid. 18 opened windows, and all of them were full. Clips of newsreels flickered. My eyes were still groggy from sleep, so I didn't get a good look at them, but I remember seeing faces. Faces without eyes, faces without noses, faces that didn't have any mouths, but faces that could still talk, faces with skin that moved, undulated, being pushed outward by some inside force. And I remember the feeling that overtook me, the sensation of something wiggling inside my face, like a worm was trapped between my nose and my eyes. I screamed. The remote fell off the couch. It hit the floor. The batteries were knocked out, and the faces vanished in a flurry of static. Connection broken. The most cliche horror story. You're hanging out alone in your living room, sitting on your comfy green couch, just flipping through the channels of your old television set. It's hard to find something interesting to watch since it's already 2 in the morning. You can't go to sleep. Your body's too tired to move around, so you lock yourself into a position where you think you can feel drowsiness. You stop clicking the remote because you just finished flipping through all of the channels your satellite can give. You close your eyes as the light and the sound effects of the television give you a feeling of safety. You're close to finally giving yourself some sleep when a familiar music invades your ears. You feel nostalgic. It's as if memories from your childhood came back and start swirling around your thoughts. Then again, the feeling of safety surrounds you, wraps around you like no harm can ever come near. When all of a sudden, the music stops. The illumination from the television suddenly dropped to darkness. The feeling that once hugged you has evaded. You suddenly hear creaking footsteps, like someone's around you, just lurking, just watching you sleep. Your senses are telling you not to open your eyes. On the other hand, you think it's probably your sister or your mother just turning off the television, planning to tuck you in for a good night's sleep. But suddenly, a horrible fact came inside your head. You live alone. The holder of media. In any city or any town, go to the area of the strongest internet connection. On the internet, search for the most popular site, and in its search bar type in the holder of media. If you are in a rural area with no internet connection, go to the nearest radio or television station, speak to the broadcaster, and ask for the holder of media. The broadcaster will lead you to a room stacked floor to ceiling with cathode ray television sets. You will hear millions of people screaming at the same volume. You must not listen to these screams. Millions of websites will overwhelm you at once. You must not pay attention. Buzzing static will replace the cacophony, and the stream will fade to television static. Glare into the snow of television, and a being made from static will emerge. You must not take your eyes off of the creature. If you do, your eardrums will burst, and sharp needles will stab out your eyes. It will cut your tongue out, and you will be sightless, voiceless, and deaf for eternity. The creature will give you a modem if you use the internet, and an antenna if not. Item 539 and 540. You may use these devices. They will connect with speed to any site and every channel. However, it will occasionally direct to scenes of torture, death, and unspeakable horror. 3:33. At 3:33 a.m. tonight, you are to turn on your television and switch to Channel 5. It doesn't matter what sort of programming would typically be broadcasted at this hour, the results will remain the same. When you see her, immediately gaze into her eyes. Albeit to you, they will appear empty and hollow. Understand that she can see you. When she asks you your name, give it to her. When she asks you what your purpose on this planet is, tell her the truth. That when it all comes down to it, you aren't all that certain. From here, she will fall silent, and I cannot stress this enough, keep your eyes on hers. Do not look away. When the television turns to static, stay still. Don't attempt to switch the channel, exit the room, or go to sleep. All will prove unsuccessful at best, and at worst, beyond disquieting. Count to 60 and do so silently. Once you've reached 60, put your fingers into your mouth. You'll have to pull every worm out individually if you want any chance of survival. If you were to vomit, which you will certainly want to, you'd end up with a pile of your internal organs soaking at your feet. Some of the worms will be long and thick, others just nothing more than strands of hair. You'll know when it's over because it will stop burning. The nausea will subside and the onslaught will cease. You will have been cured. Leave the worms to their natural devices after they have been expelled from your body. Once you are sure it's all over, lay in your bed and go to sleep. When you wake up, the mess you've made will be gone, and any evidence of the events of the previous night completely and totally obliterated. Do not refuse her call. She will be waiting for you. Set alarms if you must. Stay awake if you choose. But remember, she is here to help you. She needs to see you tonight. She will make it so, one way or another. So you do well to make things a little bit easier on her. For she is the Holy Mother, the mother of all. She doesn't want you to be sick. She exists to mitigate. She exists to heal. She exists to nurture her children and to toss the disobedient into the deepest pits of the inferno. The static speaks my name. It was a cold Friday night, and I was standing outside my friend's house, twiddling my thumbs, when the door swung open. "Hey, John, great to see you," I exclaimed. "You too," he mumbled. "Come in." I stepped inside. Same house, same hallway, I thought. John couldn't have looked more different, though. His shoulders were slouched, his face unshaven, his heavy bags under his eyes. He was a far cry from the upbeat John that I knew. "You got my text?" "Yeah, I did." "It'd be great for you to get out. None of the boys have seen you since Jenny." I trailed off. "Look, if you want to talk about it, I'm here. We've been worried about you." "I'm better. Honestly, I'm moving on." Then he paused, as if something had just occurred to him. He looked agitated, like the words were stuck in his mouth. "Do you think I could show you something?" "Sure," I said. He led me down the hallway and we entered the sitting room. The room was dark with only shreds of daylight coming through a gap in the curtains. It looked like a rubbish heap. Plastic and cardboard were scattered everywhere, and there was even a cold uneaten pizza dumped on the coffee table. Finally, in the middle of the room sat a large pristine television, looking bizarrely out of place. I laughed nervously. "You need to clean up a bit in here." "Yes, maybe another time." "Hang on a minute. This better not be some prank. I know what you're like. I'm not joking around here. You'll see. He motioned to the sofa. Sit. I reluctantly did as he said. He flicked the television on with the remote, and light immediately flooded the room. There was only static on the screen, though. I looked at John. He was staring at it intensely. Naturally, I was freaked out by this. Ha ha, very funny. What? Shh, he interrupted. Quiet. Just quiet. He continued, his voice barely an audible whisper. Can't you hear it? His voice was low and intense. The static, it talks to me. It always does. Can't you hear what it's saying? Listen. The only sound was a deafening crackle. With horror, I looked at John's face, his crooked smile, his empty eyes. I quickly left and didn't look back. As time passed, my friend got help and was able to recover from his depression. I never spoke of those events again, either to him or to any other living soul. Some nights, I've even been plagued by nightmares. The sight of that television screen and the sound of the deafening static speaking in my ears. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.